Everything is perfect. Your cat is in your lap, purring. You're petting them. The moment feels completely mutual. And then, without any warning you could see, they bite you. Not a playful nip. A real bite. And then they jump down and walk away like nothing happened, leaving you sitting there confused, maybe a little hurt, wondering what you did wrong. Most people take it personally. Some get frustrated. Almost everyone assumes their cat is unpredictable, moody, or just fundamentally strange. But that bite wasn't random. It wasn't mood. It wasn't your cat turning on you for no reason. It was a message. One they'd been sending for a while before you noticed. And once you understand what's actually behind it, you'll never be caught off guard by it again. Here's what's really going on. 1. They weren't being affectionate, they were tolerating. This is the part most owners don't want to hear. But it's the most important place to start. That moment that felt mutual, your cat purring in your lap while you petted them, may not have been as mutual as it seemed. Purring is not a guaranteed signal of contentment. Cats purr when they're happy, yes. But they also purr when they're anxious, when they're overstimulated, when they're trying to self-soothe through a situation that's become uncomfortable. The purr you heard wasn't necessarily your cat saying this is wonderful. It may have been your cat saying I'm trying to stay calm. Here's the distinction that changes everything. A cat who is genuinely seeking affection approaches you. They initiate. They climb into your lap by choice, press into your hand, seek out the contact on their own terms. A cat who is tolerating affection stays still. They don't leave, but they didn't exactly ask to be there either. If your cat was placed in your lap, or stayed because they were comfortable before the petting started, they may have been managing the situation rather than enjoying it. And management has a limit. When that limit is reached, the message stops being subtle. 2. They told you before the bite. You just didn't speak the language. Here's the truth that most owners find uncomfortable once they hear it. The bite was not the first signal. It was the last one. Before that bite, your cat communicated, clearly, repeatedly, in a language that's completely consistent and learnable, that something needed to change. The problem wasn't that they didn't tell you. The problem was that the signals they used aren't the ones most humans know to look for. A tail that begins to flick or lash slowly. That's signal 1. Not aggressive, not dramatic, just a shift from stillness into movement that wasn't there before. Skin that twitches along the spine, a ripple that moves through the fur. That's signal 2. The nervous system surfacing, responding to something that's crossed from pleasant into too much. Ears that rotate slightly backward, away from you, no longer soft and relaxed. Signal 3. Attention moving away from comfort and toward caution. Eyes that shift, pupils that change, a gaze that becomes less soft and more fixed. Signal 4. A body that subtly tenses, weight redistributing, muscles that were loose becoming something closer to ready. Signal 5. By the time the bite arrives, your cat has been speaking for a while. The bite happens because every earlier signal was missed, and this was the one that finally got through. Behaviorists call this the overstimulation sequence. And once you know what you're looking for, you'll start seeing it early, long before it reaches the end. 3. Your touch feels different to them than it does to you. This is the piece of the puzzle that surprises most owners most completely. Your cat's skin is not like yours. It contains a significantly higher density of nerve endings, and those nerve endings include specialized sensory receptors, mechanoreceptors, that detect pressure, vibration, and temperature shifts with a level of sensitivity that has no equivalent in human skin. What you experience as a gentle stroke registers on your cat's body with considerably more intensity. A touch that feels light and pleasant to your hand can feel like genuine sensory pressure to them. Not painful at first, but present, noticeable, demanding of their nervous system's attention in a way that builds with every repetition. This is why the bite often seems to come from nowhere. From your perspective, you were doing the same thing you've been doing for the past several minutes, and it had been fine. But from your cat's perspective, fine had quietly become a lot, and a lot had quietly become too much, and you had no way of feeling the gradient they were moving along because you weren't the one experiencing it. Veterinary research has identified specific areas where this threshold is reached most quickly: the base of the tail, the lower back, the belly. These regions are so densely supplied with sensory receptors that even moderate touch can tip from comfortable to overwhelming in a very short span of time. The bite isn't aggression. It's a nervous system that finally said enough in the only language loud enough to be heard. And if this is making sense of something you've experienced, hit like and subscribe. We want to reach every owner who's been taking that bite personally when it was never personal at all. 4. Something in their past made hands complicated. Not every bite comes purely from overstimulation in the moment. For some cats, especially those who were rescued, rehomed, or had difficult early experiences, there's a layer underneath the sensory response that goes back much further than the current petting session. Somewhere in their history, hands weren't always safe. Maybe they were used to discipline. Maybe they moved too fast, too unpredictably, in ways that became associated with discomfort or fear. Maybe the experiences were minor by any objective measure, but to a cat whose nervous system stores negative associations quickly and releases them slowly, minor doesn't mean forgettable. Cats have strong associative memory. Research in animal cognition has confirmed that negative physical experiences are encoded more durably than positive ones. They form faster and they persist longer. A cat who had difficult experiences with hands may have spent months or years slowly building new associations with you specifically. But that original wiring doesn't disappear. It waits. And sometimes, in a particular moment, a touch in a specific place, a movement that echoes something old, a sensation that the body recognizes before the mind does, it surfaces. Not as a decision, as a reflex. Your cat wasn't reacting to you in that moment. They were reacting to something that happened before you ever met them. And the bite was the only exit they could find from a feeling they couldn't explain. 5. The way you were petting them was the problem, not the petting itself. Most owners pet their cats the way they'd pet a dog. Long, full body strokes from head to tail, sustained and rhythmic, covering as much surface area as possible. With dogs, this is often exactly right. Cats are built differently. The areas that feel most natural to pet, the back, the base of the tail, the belly, are precisely the areas most loaded with the sensory receptors that lead to overstimulation. And long, repeated strokes accumulate sensory input in a way that shorter, more targeted contact doesn't. What cats generally prefer, and what research consistently confirms, is contact concentrated around the head, the cheeks, the base of the ears, under the chin. These areas have scent glands, which means contact there feels not just pleasant but meaningful to a cat. It activates their own marking behavior, their own sense of social bonding. They lean into it rather than tolerating it. The contrast matters. A cat being petted on their cheeks and chin is often a cat actively participating, pressing into the contact, directing it, asking for more. A cat being stroked down their back is often a cat enduring the contact and hoping it ends before their threshold does. The bite isn't a rejection of you. It's a rejection of a specific kind of touch that their body was never well suited to receive. Shift where your hands go, and the entire interaction changes. 6. They weren't turning on you. They were finally being honest. Here's what ties all of this together, and it's the part that reframes everything. Your cat didn't bite you because they're unpredictable. They didn't bite you because they're ungrateful, or because the affection meant nothing, or because something in them switched from loving you to not. They bit you because they ran out of other ways to tell you something important, and because the thing they were trying to tell you had been true for longer than the bite suggests. Think about what it took to get to that moment. Your cat stayed. They didn't leave when the first signal went unnoticed, or the second, or the third. They stayed through every missed cue, every continued stroke, every moment where the thing they were communicating wasn't received. They gave you every chance they had before they resorted to the one that couldn't be ignored. That's not aggression. That's patience that finally exhausted itself. And now that you know the sequence, the tail, the skin, the ears, the eyes, the tension, you don't have to wait for the end of it. You can hear them earlier. You can respond before they've used up everything else. You can be the person who noticed before the bite, rather than the person who only noticed because of it. Your cat wasn't turning on you in that moment. They were trusting you with something true about them, about what their body can hold, about where their limits actually are, about what being close to them genuinely requires. That's not a warning. That's information. And a cat who trusts you enough to be honest about what they need, even in the bluntest way available to them, is a cat who hasn't given up on being understood. They're still trying. They've always been trying. The only question is whether you're ready to listen earlier next time.